And if you join before I announce this, we are asking folks to announce themselves in the chat. Let us know you're here. And then please mute your microphone for sound quality so everyone can hear. And then after the staff and applicant presentations, we'll open the floor for a kind of moderated discussion so that we can make sure that the sound quality is clear in the recording. We actually have a couple of staff members on the call today, and so some of them are going to be doing different roles. And so I asked that they announce themselves, and then Jesse, if you want to go over how to use Teams and some of the features we're going to be using tonight.
Sure, I can do that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jesse Gutierrez. I'm with the Housing and Planning Department. And before we get started, thanks for joining us tonight for the virtual community meeting and discussion hosted by the City of Austin's Housing and Planning Department. If you're joining us online, and if you want to chat with today's presenters, and if you haven't found the chat box yet, hover over your screen with your mouse, and you will see a taskbar appear in the center of the screen with several options. The two most important will be the little hand button, which is kind of what we're going to ask you to raise your hand if you have a question after the presentations. And the second button is the show conversation button, which will open up the meeting chat box. If the hand button doesn't appear, you might have to click on the ellipses, the three little dots, and that'll give you more options. And the raise your hand button might be there. If it is, and you click on it to activate it, and you should be good to go. And that's it for me.
Do other City of Austin staff want to announce themselves?
Yeah, I'm Mark Walters, Housing and Planning Department, and I'll be moderating this evening's questions. I'm going to turn my camera off now.
Mark Walters.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on the staff presentation. I'm going to ask that folks stay on mute during this presentation and the applicant presentation, and then we'll have that moderated discussion. My name is Rachel Tepper. I'm with the Housing and Planning Department, and I'll be the case manager for this case, which is NPA 2020-001 5.04. This is for the East MLK combined planning area. And this is the ordinance required community meeting. So thank you all for coming. The agenda tonight is I'll go over some case information and some guidelines for group discussion in this online format. And then I'll go over why there's a plan amendment application, what is it amending, which is the future land use map, and what is that? And then the applicant will give a presentation and we'll open the floor for questions and answers, and I'll close it out with some next steps. So the case information for this site is in the East MLK combined planning area. It's about 5 acres. And the addresses are listed here, but you probably all know it as it being on Lot Avenue. It's a subdivision. With new addresses here, but it's a 5-acre lot at this point. And it's this MPA case here, which I've said before, so I won't. Yep.
This is Mark. You want to share your screen? We can't see the presentation.
Oh, okay. Let me know if y'all can see it.
We can now.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay, so the future land use map request is from single family to higher density single family. And the property owner that we have on the call today is Dick Hall with the Geyser Group. And the applicant agent who will be giving the presentation after mine is Michael Whalen and Michael Gaudini with Armhurst & Brown. So the guidelines for the discussion tonight, obviously due to social distancing, we're in this online format rather than at a library, which is where we usually have these meetings. We're hoping to facilitate a conversation that allows everybody who wants to to be able to speak during the discussion section. We ask that you listen respectfully, criticize ideas, not individuals, blame, avoid assumptions about others, especially based on their perceived social group. And as staff, we reserve the right to delete any offensive language or remove offenders from the meeting. So the way that we suggest tonight's event going is, if you have something to say during the applicant presentation, please say it in the chat. And then once the presentations are over, you can raise your hand and vocalize any comments, questions, or concerns. And then for those that are joining by telephone, we ask that you stay on mute as well until the discussion, and then we'll give you an opportunity to speak during that time. And in the chat, we may group some of the similar questions together in the way that we answer them. And then we did want to mention, if you're having any issues with seeing the presentation or it coming in with a lag, that sometimes that's caused by the video. So you're more than welcome to keep the video on, but that we've noticed that may be a reason for any kind of lag. So why a neighborhood plan amendment? Neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. And for any type of, the city charter requires that any zoning changes have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So this is in some ways the first step to a zoning change. And in most cases, neighborhood plan amendments run parallel with the zoning case. In this case, I think the zoning case has not yet been filed, but it will be filed shortly, as I understand it, and the applicant can speak to that more. So what is a future land use map? So this map, which is probably a little hard to see, but all you really need to know is that the blue areas in the City of Austin map have neighborhood plans, and we're in the East MLK combined planning area, which is actually right here where my cursor is, if you can see that. When I go to the next slide, we can kind of zoom in on that. And this is the future land use map for the East MLK combined neighborhood planning area. And this map has a bunch of colors on it that delineate different future land uses. The yellow is single family, the red is commercial, the brown is mixed use, the orange is multifamily, and then the purple is industrial. And in this case, we're looking at single family and changing that to higher density single family, which higher density single family is this golden color on the future land use map. And that aligns with the zoning categories. So that yellow single family aligns with the zoning category of, for example, SF3 single family. And that golden color is the higher density single family, which aligns with the zoning category of SF6 or townhouse and condominium residential. So this is the site. It's just an aerial overview of the site. Today, just to the north of the site is the Springdale Neighborhood Park. It's about 0.2 miles from Springdale Road. This is just a Google Street View of the today. You can see that it's a vacant property. And this is that zoning or the future land use map, just kind of zoomed into this tract, and that yellow represents that single family zoning category. And you can see that it's today aligned with the zoning of SF3. And again, we just want to show the City of Austin Comprehensive Plan. Imagine Austin has a growth concept map as well that says kind of where growth should go in the city, and we've got activity corridors and centers as areas appropriate for growth, and this area is about 0.2 miles from that Springdale Road, which is an activity corridor, and about 0.8 miles from Springdale Station, which is Imagine Austin defines as a activity center. So I'm gonna hand it off to Michael Whalen and Michael Gaudini to do the applicant presentation.
Thanks. Can you do the next slide, please? Well, first, I want to thank everybody for giving us this opportunity to discuss these cases. I'm Michael Whalen, and with me tonight are Michael Gaudini, who is working with me on this case, and Dick Hall, who is a representative of the property owner. Next slide, please. These cases we'll be discussing this evening involves vacant property that you just saw, just south of Springdale Neighborhood Park, adjacent to it as you saw. The property already has an approved subdivision and could move forward under the existing plan, but doing so would force the project into providing larger, more expensive homes, which is not what we want to do. Instead, we would like to provide more missing middle homes, which would be more modestly sized and thus more attainable, and would also include 5 long-term income restricted affordable units, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We believe that this missing middle vision provides better outcomes for families and for the city than what would occur under the approved subdivision. And in order to accomplish this vision, we have requested 2 changes from the city. The first would change the future land use map from our property to be higher density single family, which Rachel already reviewed with you. It's a designation that allows missing middle housing. The second, which we will be filing very soon, again, as Rachel mentioned, would rezone the property from SF3 to SF6, and we will see a summary of what that would mean in terms of site development regulations in a bit. We go to the next slide. So again, here's the site. As already noted, it's about 5 acres and is currently vacant. I think that's important. There's no housing there today. It is directly south of Springdale Neighborhood Park, which provides opportunities for better connectivity between the neighborhood and the park. Next slide. This is the subdivision that the city has already approved under the existing zoning. Subdivision, as many of you may know, is a step in the development process where the city approves the layout of the streets and lots. You can see that here. And then the next step after that would be doing a site plan for construction. This shows what we think is achievable under the existing subdivision, which is about 31 units overall. There wouldn't be any income restricted units. These would all be larger units. There might be some smaller ADUs, but most of them would be larger, more expensive housing. Let's go to the next slide. In contrast, next slide. In contrast, our proposal would make it feasible for us to provide missing middle housing and affordable housing. We're going to see a bigger image of this in a moment. As you can see, though, up the top left, the overall number of ownership units would increase to about 55, which in turn makes it feasible for us to provide more of them as modestly sized homes rather than large houses. And to put that in perspective, we estimate that by proceeding with this proposal instead of the approved subdivision, it reduces the estimated market rate that would be, or if you will, the selling price by more than about 20% on average, because these are going to be a little bit smaller homes. This proposal also makes it feasible for us to provide the 5 long-term income restricted affordable homes, which again, we're going to discuss in a little bit more detail. So first, let's take a little bit closer look at this proposal and what the layout looks like. This is a larger image of the current concept plan we are working with for our proposal. If we go to the next slide. It would provide a combination of both detached and attached homes, all of which are for ownership and, as noted, would be more modestly sized and attainable. Next slide. Along the western portion of the site, we're planning to build a shared use pathway to provide a pedestrian and bike-friendly connection from the broader neighborhood directly to Springdale Park. We go to the next slide. And along the eastern portion of the site, we would help ensure the health of Fort Branch Creek by providing a water quality pond and a large natural area buffering the creek. Next slide. Finally, there's been some questions that I've received, and I've talked to some of you that are here today regarding an existing tree on the site that the approved subdivision would remove. Under our proposal, we would look to design the road in a way that curves around this tree and preserves it. That's our goal, and as you can see here, though the roadway alignments and other designs are ultimately subject to the city approval, we would propose and hopefully get the city's approval to design around it. So go to the next slide. That's our vision, and here's kind of the overview. I want to go to the next slide. The first thing I'd like to run through real quick is a comparison of some of the regulations that apply today versus under our proposal, so you can get a sense of how all of this would work. And I told you I'd do a side-by-side comparison where it says approved subdivision, that's the SF, and then on the right-hand side, the column is our proposal. You go to the next slide. The major increases would occur in the types of homes allowed. So we'd be allowed to do the small lot, single family or row house size. And it would increase impervious cover to 55% while keeping the building cover and height the same. So you can see building cover has been faded out, but it's 40%, 40%, and the height is also the same for each of those at 32 feet. And as I said earlier, it would make it feasible to provide more homes. Instead of 31, there'd be the 55, approximately 55. Go to the next slide. By doing this, it makes it feasible to provide more attainable homes at a reduced selling price and provide the 5 income restricted homes that we've talked about. So let's go to the next slide. I've mentioned the term income restricted affordable homes a few times, and here's what that means. These would be 5 ownership opportunities. So not rental, these are ownership opportunities provided on site and made available for sale at 80% of the median family income for 99 years. The city adjusts the median family income levels each year, but currently 80% MFI would mean these units, a 2-bedroom unit, would be legally required to sell for no more than $180,200. $180,200, so about $180,000. We've already started the conversation with the city on the best way to structure this if we are approved, and we're thinking that the smart housing program may be a good option. We're working through that, especially since the bus stop is walking distance from this property. It's about a quarter of a mile away from the property, as Rachel already indicated. So to recap, if we go to the next slide, there is an approved but unbuilt subdivision for the site that would virtually ensure large, expensive homes on large lots. In contrast, our proposal would provide more modestly sized missing middle homes that are more attainable to more families. And I mean, as you can see, it would also provide 5 long-term income restricted homes for sale to families earning less than 80% of the median family income. And I know some of you are wondering, well, what about the other homes, the other 50 homes that are there? We really don't know what the market price will be by the time these are built. It's probably 2 years from now. But if, again, these are going to be smaller homes, so our hope would be, and our expectation would be, that they'd be about 20% less than if you had larger homes on these lots. But we really don't know exactly what the price point is. All I can tell you is what the price point is for the MFI sites, the 5 affordable units, because that's set by the Housing and Planning Department. It's adjusted each year, but this year, 2020, it's set at $180,000. I know that we'll get you a size in a minute. I know there was somebody who was talking about flooding as well. We're going to fully comply with city code. We have a water quality and stormwater detention facility, and so there won't be any more water than currently falls into the creek now. So we won't, in terms of adverse impact, we are obligated by code not to increase the adverse impact on the creek. And I don't know, Dick, I know that you haven't really got an exact size, but I don't know what some of the questions are about. Well, what size are these homes? I don't know whether there's an approximation, 1,500 square feet, 1,700 square feet, but what the approximation is.
Sure. I mean, approximately what we're looking at for 2 bedrooms right now are homes between 1,100 and 1,200 square feet. And then for 3 bedrooms, around 1,500 square feet. And compared to the current lots, those are much smaller average unit sizes.
Yeah, I also wanted to add into that under the, and this is kind of a smaller point, but I think it's important just to understand why kind of the existing subdivision forces some of those things to happen, which is currently, you know, if you're going to provide an ADU and then do a bigger unit in the front, you max out the ADU at, I think it's 1,100 or so square feet.
That's
which
right.
means that it forces that front house to be much, much larger. Because if you have a 7,000 square foot lot, that means you're going to have a nearly 2,000 square foot front house.
All right, should we move into the question and answer portion? I think Mark.
Yeah, I'm here, ready to start fielding questions. During the presentation, there were several questions that came up, and I think the first one, and I think that's more directed towards staff, is from Christina Vincent, and she asked, just to clarify, that future land use can also mean current land use map? Well, yes and no. In order, like Rachel pointed out in the beginning of her presentation, the zoning must be in alignment. Well, all neighborhood plans are attachments to Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. They're a part of it. And the city charter says that all zoning and land use decisions need to be in alignment with the comprehensive plan. So when these plans are made, there's a future land use map created, and that's oftentimes a good guess of what things might like to be in the future, but it's not written in stone, and sometimes circumstances change, and that's why their council created an amendment process. So in the case of this neighborhood plan amendment case, it originally said single family. Someone took the time and effort to create a single family subdivision, but circumstances have changed. Seller, I don't know exactly. And so in order to get the zoning change, we have a new person attending the meeting. Get the zoning change, we have to, or the applicant has to ask for a plan amendment. So in that regard, it's a current land use map. But if you look at many of the commercial corridors where there's mixed use, right now there currently probably isn't mixed use. There's probably just straight commercial or even multifamily. As for example. So it's both a current and future land use map depending on circumstances. I don't know if that's a satisfactory question, but it's kind of both yes and no is the answer to that. Other questions, and I think Mr. Whalen went over this. What is the estimate selling price? You said they're 2 years out, so there was not really. I mean, I don't know if they would like to address this again, if they want to address that question. Again, another question about the price is talking about flood zones. I think Mr. Whalen addressed that. I think you addressed the question regarding larger and smaller unit sizes. That I think that question's been addressed. Pinaki Ghosh has a question or statement saying this flum is just wrong because this is from 2001 and many of the zonings have already changed. Perhaps, but in regards to the site in question, we can look into the which map is being used. But to the site in question, I think the fact that it is up to date regarding the current land use, future land use designation is single family. And I think that is all the questions we have from the chat during that. So I'm going to go now into.
Really quickly, I did want to just clarify if the flum was in reference to the This slide here, you are correct that there have been zoning cases and future land use cases that might have changed since this PDF. So that was just kind of an exhibit to show what a FLUM is, but everything shown kind of on these slides that are specific to the case should be updated, but we can double check that.
So I'm going to go, I don't know who raised their hand first, but I'm going to recognize John Hager first. And John, do you have a question? Please remember to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually have a few questions. So, Mark, I'm not sure if you'd rather
just go ahead and
save
we'll
me
just
for
go
the
through
end.
the. You may ask questions that other people have. So
Okay.
we'll just go through that, and I'll just kind of go down the line. The next person will be Angela Benavides, and your name is Garza, and then Pinocchio Ghosh after that. So John, Angela, and Pinocchio is the order that I'm going to go by. So.
Okay. So I'll ask all my questions sort of one after the other, and then Michael, if you want to address them after I'm done asking, that's probably easiest. The first is in reference to the flooding concerns, and I'm wondering if there's a couple things that we often ask of these SF3 to SF6 zoning changes in order to address flooding concerns, because in this area, even though the city does require that you not change the amount of runoff, we still see flooding problems resulting from city approved projects. So one is, can you hold to 45% impervious cover that is allowed by SF3, or can you get close to that instead of going to the 55% of SF6? And or could you design the water quality and stormwater retention facilities to greater than that which is required for City of Austin approval, say to 110% or 120% of what is required? So that's sort of a two-part question addressing flooding. Next is traffic is another major concern for our area, especially in the Hog Pen and Sanaa neighborhoods, where these roads are pretty narrow and hilly and twisting. I'm assuming that a TIA is not required for this, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to produce a neighborhood traffic analysis to demonstrate what the impacts are locally on traffic patterns generated by this site. Next is, we had talked separately about the possibility of pursuing the Better Builder program, or at least pursuing some of the standards within the Better Builder program, especially the living wage component. And then lastly, we often see in this area a pretty poor construction site management practices, which lead to flooding, a lot of debris winding up on neighboring properties, even some that could cause some structural concerns to some of the neighboring properties. So I just want to give you an opportunity to address what the plans are to ensure that there are only the highest standards possible maintained on the construction site. And that concludes my questions. Thanks for your patience.
Okay, John, you might want to remember to hit the hand button down to lower your hand.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay, after these responses, we'll go to Angela. Michael, you want to?
Yeah, so the highlight I have are flooding, transportation, Better Builder, and construction site management are the big items that I have. Got it. So on the flooding, that'll be at site plan. You can see, given the site, it'll be tough to go, even with that broad area to the right there that you see, that green buffer there along the creek, the tributary, I guess. Even with that, I think it's pretty close to 55. So I think we would need to go look at the cost. And whenever you go bigger on a stormwater detention, either you're going deeper or you're going wider. And so we need to look at the best way to do that, because you'd have to do, if you do bioretention versus an ugly cement one, just as a little bit different design. So that definitely something we could explore. And we'll have time to do that between now and any hearing. So that's a good one for us to go back and look at. On the NTA, the neighborhood transportation analysis, first, as you know, instead of one driveway, we're going to have two driveways. The original, the thing that's been approved is only one, so I think immediately we're going to have a little bit of an advantage because there's two driveways, but I think an NTA is going to be done for this, is my understanding. And isn't that what, Michael Gaudini, isn't that what staff has told us, that an NTA is going to be needed?
Yes, I believe that there's going to be an NTA for this property. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have that. On the Better Builder program, I haven't had a chance to explore that completely. I know the living wage is at $13.50. I think a lot of contractors are now paying that simply because housing is so contractors or employees are hard to come by, especially in the construction arena. You're probably familiar with that, more familiar with that than I am. So that's something obviously we'll talk further about. When you're given a site like this, though, really hard when you've got 5 affordable units at basically below cost to build. You would know that better than literally anybody on this call. I mean, at $180,000, it's going to be really, really nearly impossible to build. We have to do 1-star green building under the smart housing program. So there's additional things that we've got to do under smart housing that add to the cost. But having said that, doing a pro forma to see whether the Better Builder program elements are achievable is something that we certainly are willing to look at. And then construction site, I'm sorry, there's been problems. I'm sure that we're going to hear, I know there's an engineer on, I forgot who it is, but about some of the construction sites and the problems nearby, and you've taken some video, I know. And I think in that regard, I don't know why people are not complying with rules and regulations that require appropriate sedimentation features to prevent runoff, but we will be fully compliant. And if there's a particular thing you've seen that others have violated repeatedly, then we would like to know that, especially when we're under construction, so that we do not make the mistakes of others, because it would not be our goal. So did I hit everything, John? Is that a yes? Okay, thanks.
The next set of questions is from Angela Benavides Garza. So Angela, if you would unmute your mic and you can ask questions at this time.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'd like to start out. Thank you, Mr. Whalen, and thank you all for keeping a tree in the plan. We appreciate that. So my questions for you is to kind of help us understand a lot of the words that you're using, like NDA. I don't think a lot of our people understand those acronyms that you're using. So is there a way that, as you explain this, that you kind of explain what those things are really quickly? And then the other thing I was going to ask is that we know that there is a GNDC incorporation in the area, and we just recently found this out with another project. I had no idea about it, and I looked into it. And I know you and I had a conversation about that you're not choosing the incorporation route, and we'd like to know a little bit why you're not choosing that, which might provide a little bit more affordable housing in a situation like this. Also, I have one more question for you. When you're speaking of the smart housing, can you kind of elaborate on that and help us understand like what that does for, like what that means for that smart housing house for 99 years exactly? And then one more question is, I know that you can't give us an idea of a price, but we were looking in this area, and because I am a real estate professional, we know what the prices are averaging about $400,000 to $500,000 mark. Do you think that's what you would be seeing these prices running as we decide to go forward in this area? Thank you so much.
And Angela, could you remember to hit the hand button to lower your hand?
Okay. Can I run through those real quickly? So neighborhood transportation analysis, it's not a full-blown TIA. The NTA is a neighborhood transportation analysis, typically a much smaller analysis of this very kind of more of a micro area, more of this very centralized area done by the city, and I think it's done as part of our zoning case. So there'll be an analysis done in connection with the zoning case. GNDC stands for Guadalupe Neighborhood Development Corporation. They are a nonprofit that owns property and also has a robust list of tenants who would like to live in affordable units that are available for rent. One reason why we've gone the smart housing route, and smart housing is an acronym for, Mark Walters, are you going to help me? I forgot. Sustainable transit. Anyway,
Mark, yeah, it's
well,
5 letters. It means 5 things.
Dick Hall's looking it up right now, and he'll chime in when I'm done with exactly what the SMART acronym stands for. That's a fair point, Angela, to have us get the acronyms right. The reason I like the smart housing program is it is with the city, so you're not asking a neighborhood to enforce the restrictive covenant requirement, which can be expensive, and instead it would be done by the city. So there'll be a restrictive covenant with the city. The city is the enforcing entity. They are the compliance entity, so they have a full compliance manual that we would have to comply with. They would keep track of who's in there. And the restrictive covenant, which would make the city the beneficiary, would ensure that the property remains if there's any subsequent sale, that the sale price is at that 80% MFI level. So that's one reason why we're looking at smart housing. We had a good conversation with them. I really, in terms of price, only because it's 2 years out, Angela, and you know better than anybody as a broker. If you're willing to sell me a house right now for $400,000 and I can get it 2 years from now, I might take that deal. But I just have no idea what the price will be. But our hope is that the price will be, because these are going to be smaller, as Dick described. We're hoping that these are going to be 20% less, just because they're going to be smaller 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom homes compared to what is going up in the neighborhood or what already exists in the neighborhood. Dick, what is SMART? Because I forgot the acronym. Did you have it?
So SMART stands for safe, mixed income, accessible, reasonably priced, and transit oriented. So safe has to do with meeting building codes and making sure that the building process is safe. Mixed income and reasonably priced both match what we're talking about. So in our case, that means that at least 5% of the units on the property are are affordable for the 99-year period that we've discussed. Accessible has to do with matching ADA standards for some of the units and making sure that they are accessible by disabled persons. And transit oriented is related to how close it is to a transit corridor, which, as Rachel pointed out earlier, it's quite close to Springdale Road, but also very close to a bus stop on Weberville Road, and satisfies the transit requirement there.
And this is Mark Walters. Also, to accessible, it means that your doorways are 36 inches wide minimum, that your light switches are lower, so a person in a wheelchair can easily access them, and like doorknobs are actually handles rather than doorknobs. So it's easier for someone with a disability to actually live in one of the units. So I can't do that question. The next set of questions, next questioner comes from Pinaki Ghosh. And Mr. Ghosh, would you unmute your microphone and ask your questions?
Yeah. Hi, this is Pinaki. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So one of the things first I will request Siri is next time when you show the plum, I would request you to kindly show a plum which is accurate, because you are showing something here as an evidence to make a case, and you are showing something which are inaccurate, completely inaccurate, because every time we see the same picture where enormous amount of land has already been converted into high density housing. So that's statement number one. Why that is important? Because because that is good engineering. Somebody mentioned here, there is an engineer here. Yes, I am that engineer, 4 years at Stanford University. And engineering helps. It differentiates between people who do not know and who know. So these high density housings, which have already occurred, is creating enormous amount of flooding. What initially, when this was this subdivision was created, I was the chairman of the contact team, and there was a lot of issues about flooding. So essentially what we are doing is that we did a discussion, city agreed on something. Then now, once we agreed on something, once we signed off on something, now we went and said, let's change the plan again. That's one way of doing things. So just to let everybody know the background. So everybody agreed on this, that this will happen this way because there were a lot of issues around flooding and the creek itself, etc. Now we are saying, okay, once we have got the plan done, now I am changing the plan again because you guys have foolishly signed everything. So now the next question, the questions I will ask. One is, when you are putting in a FLAM is essentially a map to do infrastructure planning. A FLAM is, why a FLAM is there? The FLAM is to do how we need infrastructure. So these are my questions to the city employees actually, not to the builders. One, what infrastructure improvements are you making? Like stormwater, roads, etc. Number two, all these high density people housing you are putting in with the same, showing the same Weberville Road and Springdale. So all these people have to eat. When they are sick, when there is a pandemic, they have to go to hospital. So show me where. You don't have to show me. You are not going to show me. That doesn't matter. Just engineers ask questions. So show, is there a hospital close by on east of I-35? Has there been a grocery built anywhere close by in the last 5 years, in the last 4 or 5 years in this area where people can do grocery? Or pharmacy. So can you, when you are asking citizens to agree on a change of FLAM, it's an engineering question you are asking. So you should behave as an engineer and tell us, these are the infrastructure changes we are providing, instead of just showing some pictures, half of which are completely wrong. So that's all I have.
Okay, you remember to thank you for lowering your hand. Excuse me, I'll attempt to address some of the questions. I think as Rachel pointed out, and I think we'll make an attempt in the future to get the right FLAM. The FLAM that was shown was for demonstrative purposes only. It was illustrative of this is a FLAM, this is kind of how it looks, these are what the colors mean, so forth and so on. And in the future, we'll make sure we have the most up-to-date one. As to the commercial uses coming into the area, that's purely a product of the free market. If there is an area where there's zone commercial and there is an ability for someone who wants to make an investment into that area, like a grocery store or pharmacy, that's an economic choice that a corporation or an individual makes, and that's beyond the scope of the city. In that regards, though, the city can, through these planning process, attempt to provide opportunities by designating areas as commercial or mixed use, and making sure that the zoning is available for those uses to come in. That's where the cities, would come in on this. And as for the hospital, I would say that, again, that's either Central Health or one of the major hospital corporations that operate here as to where they choose to locate a hospital. I mean, again, that's outside the purview of the city of Austin. And as for infrastructure, I assume that's what you were referring to in regards to high density single family projects. I don't know if I satisfactorily answer your questions, but to the best of my ability, that's what I have. Rachel, do you anything to add?
No, I think you covered it, and just want to apologize for putting that exhibit. I recognize now it's out of date, and I think I can change it before we put this on the website.
So next set of questioners are
Mark,
Louis.
Mark, can I just clarify? There's been a bunch of chat in the about 5%.
I was going to circle back to those after these questions, but go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, I know that Dick Hall said that smart housing requires 5%. We're doing more than 5%. We're doing 5 out of approximately 55 units. So the math on that is closer to 8%. That's right, 9%. But so we're doing more than what's required of smart housing. The only difference between Guadalupe Neighborhood Development Corporation and smart housing is who's going to be the enforcing entity. If we entered into a restrictive covenant for the same 5 homes with Guadalupe, then they would be the one that would have to enforce rather than the city, and it would end up being attorney's fees and expenses that Guadalupe might have to spend 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if there was an issue with a particular owner who had bought one of those. Not with us. We're going to sell them. Once we sell them, we don't. The covenant and the obligation is no longer on us. It's on the individual owner that you would have to then go chase after. So that's that's the difference, and that's why I would recommend, and we're trying to do it with the city.
Okay. The next questioner is identified as Luis or Luis and Betty Ugalde. And if you would unmute your mic and ask your questions, here's your opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to let me speak. Question on I know you said something about the trees, the existing heritage trees that are in the lot. There's one in particular that is right next door to the street where you are going to open up. I think you're going to open up Mason, and there's a heritage tree there that is right in the middle of that road. Are you going to route around that tree, or is it going to go away? And another question is, when the construction starts, my property backs up to the proposed property that you're getting ready to build on. The construction, are they going to be in a certain hour? As from what time in the morning are they allowed to work, till what time in the evening are they allowed to work? And are they going to work on weekends? Because one of the questions that I had, one of the reasons why I'm asking is because the previous construction sites that have been around here, they worked all hours of the week, even Saturdays and Sundays, early in the mornings till late at night. And then the problem that we had was the parking. They parked all over the place. I just want to make sure that the traffic to the workers is going to be controlled in some way or the other. So those are the questions that I have. Thank you for letting me speak.
No, great question. So the heritage tree, I think it's the one, if you look at the proposal that's on the screen right now, it's that one right there in the middle, that Mason, the current subdivision. And this was another question that people had, when I had the side by side, the current subdivision would have a road coming right there and knocking that tree down. And our proposal is going to be to vacate the current plat so that it goes away and we don't have to build that road, and we can build a road around it like we're showing here on the screen. Does that make sense?
Luis.
Mr. Ugalde?
Yes.
Okay, so that's our goal with that tree.
Okay, so the one towards the park, which is maybe like three stories tall, and then the one right next to my property. That's the one. That's my concern right there. Is the one where that is right at the curve of Lot Avenue and Mason.
I think it's that one that's circled right there to the left, near that shared use path right there on the left side. I think that's the one.
All right. So
So that's staying.
I'm assuming that that tree is going to stay. So all the trees are staying.
Well, that's our goal. I want to be clear. That's
so Waylon, I think that there may be another tree that he's referring to that's actually very close to the border of the property, and that's one that is currently, it would be removed under the current plat, and as we show here, would probably need to be removed if that's, you know, approved through the city. That particular tree is more difficult to route around because it is immediately adjacent to Mason Avenue there at the property line. So I'm not sure, you know, this is all pending going through city planning, but I'm not sure that any sort of private road in from Mason Avenue would be possible without that particular tree being removed.
Okay, so that particular tree is the way it's going away. Now, that tree is like about 96 inches in diameter, so it's a heritage tree there. So,
and again, we may be speaking about two different trees. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
No, I think you pinpointed it on the second one, the one that's closest to the road, at the curb.
Wait, Luis, when you're looking at this right here, can you describe by identity? Is it near where we have Mason, where the street is, or is it near the shared use path? Where is it that you're talking about?
It's right where your map is. It's right at the where Mason is going to go into the subdivision.
Okay.
And there's that tree is right in the middle of it. It's at it's a 96-inch heritage circumference tree.
Well, I think what I would say is we need to go back and look at that, and we need to do the best we can. And this isn't scheduled for any hearing yet, and we can report back to the contact team on that particular tree.
Okay, sounds good.
That
And
makes sense.
you'll let us know when that'll happen again.
Yeah, well, I'll get back to John Hagar, who's the chair of the contact team, and then John, I assume, is taking notes, and we'll get back to you and Betty.
Okay, and also the just controlling the workers, and you know where they're going to be parking. That's one of our concerns right now.
Well, I mean, as we're lucky, this is a 5-acre site, and there's going to be it obviously isn't all going to get built immediately, so there'll be an opportunity to stage on the property. And there's sound ordinances and construction. There's very specific requirements on when you're allowed to build in a community. Very much like when everybody who's on this call, when their home or unit was built, there were requirements about when they could build their house and where people could park.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, there's another questioner from Angela Benavides Garza. If you would unmute yourself, Angela, and you could ask your question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Whalen, thank you so much for this evening and helping us understand. So I was just reading, and you can laugh at me if you need to, because I'm learning as well. If you, when we look at the restrictive covenant, and thank you for providing almost 10% of affordable housing here with this other plan, does that mean like if just kind of help us understand and visualize this? If like GMDC came into the the actual deal in any way, or this plan. Would that agreement with GNDC mean that there would be more affordable housing in this plan? And what I was reading on as a restricted covenant is that it usually controls like what is prohibited there, and that's why these restrictive deeds are there to actually protect the neighborhood and nature of the neighborhood. And how is that going to be protected with this other plan as well? So we're just trying to understand the biggest difference. And again, we're just learning about GNDC because we worked with Gregorio Casar, City Councilman Gregorio Casar, and some other things, and we just didn't know about all this. And can you kind of help us understand that a little more?
Yeah, so two things. First, it would not mean more housing. We're committing to do 5 homes and make those available at below cost. Basically, they cost more than the $180,200 that they can be purchased for in 2020. But the restrictive covenant is one from the city, and I think we got a draft of it. I have not had a chance to go through it. I could circulate to you their it's just their example restrictive covenant, which requires that the property be sold initially at that 80% MFI and that you have to continue to sell it at that over the years. So I can send that again to John and have him circulate that if that would be helpful. But I don't know if that would be helpful or not.
That'd be awesome. I think because what might help us understand and to see it, and I know that another developer did this. What he did is he just broke it down in columns and bullet point columns. And what he did is like, this is what the restricted covenant with GNDC. This is the difference between both, and this is what we're doing, and what the difference is between both. Because it sounds like to me, also the way that you stated about those costs that are associated does get to be expensive for y'all, which makes it harder for y'all to provide that affordable housing. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think it's easier to if the city's managing it, then at least if there's ever an issue, the community, if anybody feels like they're not getting the right resale price because there are resale restrictions on what you can offer an affordable unit that has this restrictive covenant, the city is a entity that will, I hope, in all likelihood, still be here 99 years from now, whereas I don't know that Guadalupe Neighborhood Development Corp will be. So that's another, in terms of assurance, that's another, I think, valuable reason to look to the smart housing possibility.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I don't know how long it will take. That's Christina, I know that's a question. Dick might have an answer in terms of how long to do all the construction.
Sure. I mean, I think at this point we're looking at, 18 months before we would be constructing the first houses. So construction might start before that for the site itself. And then the houses themselves would be built over the course of a year or a year and a half. So we're looking, I would just say approximately 3 years from now is when we would be finishing up the project if everything goes well.
And just because we have some listeners on the phone, I guess we probably want to announce the question. So that was in response to Christina Vincent's question. Is there an estimated timeline to complete all of the construction? How long will the project take from start to finish? And then I guess if we have folks on the phone and you'd like to unmute yourself to ask the question. Looks like actually, yep. Hello.
Hello, this is Pamela Williams, and I was wanting to know what is the cost of these houses going to be, and I believe they're going to be townhomes. And I also am concerned about construction. I live on Lot Avenue, around the corner from where this is going to be built. And we just lived through the last year of construction of maybe 8 different lots, with demolishing the homes, clearing the land, and building. And construction and parking really, really was a problem. So I'm also joining the other guests saying construction was kind of awful. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that, the prices, and also that other tree is just about as big as the tree in the middle. I just noticed it today driving by. So I'm concerned about that tree as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so good questions. The first one, Pamela, after you and I spoke, you've heard me use the figure 180,000.
Oh, I think you're muted, Michael.
Sorry about that. Pamela, after you and I spoke, we went and looked at the
Yes.
amount that it costs, excuse me, the price of a house at 80%. When you do it for sale,
Yeah.
these are not rentals, these are for sale.
Yes.
And it's $180,200 at 80% for a 2-bedroom, which is, as you well know, given what you told me, you had seen some of the prices in the neighborhood, is well below market and actually affordable for somebody at 80% MFI. The other homes, we're not sure what they'll be priced at because these, and I know somebody made a comment that these aren't necessarily smaller than houses that are being built, but I think they're being constructed in a way that at least is a little bit more dense, and so that's not going to draw premium pricing. It'll be at a lower price point, which is why we estimate it'll be probably about 20% or more less than 20% less than the market price when they finally get to the market. With regard to the tree, as I already said, and I'll repeat, we'll definitely go back and look at that particular tree and see what's what and what's being proposed. The other piece on our proposal that makes it different, and this goes back to the affordability question, Ms. Williams, is the houses that we're talking about building, the homes that are going to be for sale, not for rent, are smaller than what would be there anyway. So we have the ability to build about 31 houses that would be on individual lots rather than in this configuration, and that's the current subdivision. I don't know if you were here for the earlier part of the conversation. I knew you had joined a little bit late. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I missed the first part.
yeah, and so and also I would say that the housing we're talking about here is might not be smaller than what was built years ago when some of you may have bought into the neighborhood, but certainly is going to be smaller given the sizes that Dick described earlier than what's getting built now. And then finally on construction, again, people will have to comply with traffic control plan. Construction will have to be within the site and be maintained within the site. I don't know. I don't know what else I can say. I'm hopeful that construction will be, start at one end and move so that people will be able to park on one end while the other half is getting built. And then once that half is built, people can park where construction is no longer underway. So given the fact that it's a 5-acre site, Ms. Williams, I think there's at least more hope that the parking will be there, rather than out on the public streets, which, obviously is, where people, park, I guess, on the public street.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. And this construction hours, I believe because I remember calling once, and I believe they can start like at 7 in the morning and go until 10 p.m. and work every day of the week if they want to.
I'll have to.
They're allowed.
Yeah, I'll have to look up the code.
Okay.
This won't be. We'll be fully compliant with the code. The good news is there's now a code, and for some of the homes you're in, which are probably predate the code provision, which has limitations on when you can build. Many of the homes we are in now probably didn't have those limitations, so at least there'll be some limitations,
Yes.
Which is good.
Okay. Well, thank you. And the 180,000 is quite affordable. So hoping that my children may be able to purchase. So thank you for answering the questions.
Yeah, but I want to be clear, because you didn't see the beginning. It'll be a total of 55 units. Five of them will be at that 180,000. The others will be at market, because that 180 will be at a loss. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And market is what? Market price?
Who knows? I mean, really, I have no idea. I have no idea.
300,000 and up, most likely.
Okay, is there anyone else? Excuse me, I didn't mean to talk over you, ma'am. Is there anyone else have any questions? The meeting's scheduled to 8, so the meeting doesn't have to last as long as it's scheduled for if nobody else has any questions. But please feel free to ask any questions at this time, particularly those that haven't been asked, that have popped in your head since the beginning of the meeting.
I have one other question. Is there a subdivision in the area on East Austin that is comparable to what you're getting ready to build?
That's a good question. Dick, have you kind of trolled around to look for anything that's similar?
Yeah, the closest off the top of my head would be the Grove, which is at North
51st Street.
Yeah, it's at 51st Street. That one's a gated community, so that's not our plan for here. But if you look at the groups of like 4 townhomes that we show on this plan, that would be the most comparable. Now,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just one more caveat there is that they don't have the smallest unit sizes that we discussed in the 1,100 to 1,200 square foot range. I think that their smallest units are bigger than what we're thinking about.
Yeah. Right.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, Angela Benavides Garza has a question.
Yes. So I know we talked about this, Michael, and this was exciting to me. You know how you have the drives here with no names on there? Isn't there a consideration to name it after people that have done really great things in East Austin, as well, to consider naming these streets after those names as well? Didn't we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you had mentioned that. And shame on me, I'd forgotten to mention that to Dick. And again, that definitely won't something that we can talk about, but would be something on a site plan that we might develop.
Awesome, thank you.
Again, kind of last call for questions before we end the meeting. Again, I'd like to thank you for your time, for coming out this evening and listening to the presentation and providing questions.
I have some next steps, Mark.
Yeah, I was about to say, Rachel, to go through next steps. So if somebody has some questions in the interim, go ahead and raise your hand. But Rachel will kind of go over what's to be expected next in the process.
Yeah, thanks. So we will post the recording of this video if you have neighbors that would like to hear the conversation tonight. So within 5 business days, we'll share that, as well as if there are any questions that we weren't able to answer tonight, we can make those available to you by request within 5 business days. You can always email or call me with questions or comments, and any written comments will be added into the staff case report. And so the next step for this is Planning Commission. Once after the negotiations and after everything is settled and when the applicant is ready to move forward with Planning Commission, all properties within 500 feet will receive the same notification that you got for this meeting, but it'll be letting you know that Planning Commission, that this case is on the agenda for Planning Commission, and that will be a public hearing where you will have the chance to participate, to speak and let your voice heard on public record. And then that's my contact information if you have any questions. And just want to say thank you to everybody that was on the call. And now's your chance. If you have any other parting words, feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Can I just say thank you to everybody? These have been great questions, and it's a great forum. So I really appreciate everybody engaging and participating, and we'll continue to update and continue the conversation. So thank you, everybody.
Rachel, and thank you, Michael. Rachel, can I ask you a question then? So that we're not asking the developers this, so that we have a clear understanding. Is there a way that we can see clearly the difference between an incorporation and not an incorporation, so that way we understand when we're going into meetings like this with developers, what the difference is?
Yeah, we could get a staff response for this.
Okay.
So you're asking, so what's the difference from like the Guadalupe neighborhood?
Yes, that way our neighbors have all the information in front of them, and they can see clearly in front of them why this difference is going to be better than this difference. Does that make sense? And that way, when we get on with the developers, we can say, oh, we know exactly what you're talking about. And that's what makes it a little bit challenging when we don't know the difference.
Okay, and so just to clarify, so you want to, staff can provide you with the sort of technical city response for what's the difference between the Guadalupe Neighborhood Corporation and what this developer is proposing.
Right, just to give us an example. So as we go forward in our neighborhood, we know exactly what our developers are talking about when they come to us. So. Okay,
so what I'll do is I will draft that. Probably we'll have someone from neighborhood or from the kind of housing side of housing and planning review it, make sure that it's good, and get it to John within 5 business days. How's that sound?
That'd be great. That'd be wonderful.
Early next week.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you all.
Also, I'd like to just throw out there that the next meeting of the East MLK contact team will be Monday, October 19th. We typically meet at 7 p.m. Meeting virtually. We tried a meeting in person outside. So follow that Google group that I posted for updates, because we may decide close to meeting time when and how we're going to meet. So anybody interested in following up on this, Michael will probably be attending that meeting for a follow-up discussion.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Well, I guess everyone have a good evening, and thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Don't forget to vote. Don't forget to vote.
Yeah, don't forget to vote. The debate is tonight.
Oh yes.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.